like to see a show of hands, please. How many of you like toads? How many of you like to swim in the summer? How many of you love your family and your friends? How many of you worry that we're not treating our planet as nicely as we should? All right, and here's the last question. How many of you are sometimes asked to do things which you don't feel brave enough or strong enough to do? You're an excellent audience for talking about the hop, which is written by me, and it's illustrated by a wonderful illustrator who lives in Cape Town, South Africa, named Nikki Daly. And Nikki's illustrations are a big part of the book. So I'm going to use them to sort of tell you about the book. This is Tad. He's one of the two main characters in the hop. He is small for his size. This is really realistically about how big this main character is. Tad sleeps in Mother Earth's belly in the winter, and in the spring he wakes up to be on the banks of Father Pond. This is Taylor. She's the other main character in the hop, and this is her favorite place in the whole world. She loves to lie on the dock and watch the fish and the birds. She swims in the pond in the summer. She ice skates on it in the winter. She thinks of it as her magical place, a place which she has dominion over, which was created just for her. This is Tad with his friends, who are called young hoppers, and they have all just awakened from hibernation and have returned to the Hall of Young Hoppers in Toadville by Tumbledown, where they live. And the old fellow in the back, in a pile of milkweed with a sort of odd hat, is a blind prophet named Seer. And as you know, prophets know what's important. And one of the very important things that Seer knows is the story of the toads, how they came to be, and how they fit in the total scheme of things. And I want to read you a bit of Seer's creation story that he tells the young hoppers every year. The light falling through the translucent pebbles was soft behind the old prophet as he began the telling of who the toads were and how they came to be. In the beginning, when there was nothing much in the darkness but a smile, Mother Earth and Father Pond found each other. Tad could hardly make out Seer against the brightening light, but Seer's voice was strong as he told the story the exact same way he always told it, word for word. Tad could practically tell it himself. The next part was how Mother Earth and Father Pond made the sun so they could see each other. And then they made the moon to play with the sun, Sear intoned. They made the stars. Tad's mouth moved along with Sear's next words and named each one. Tad loved that part. He wished he knew all the stars' names. Sear told about the making of the trees and flowers and grass, and here came the very best part. One day they made a swirl of tadpoles to delight Father Pond. Yes, Tad knew. Mother Earth wanted the tadpoles, but Father Pond wouldn't give them to her, so they had a big fight with lots of thunder and lightning. In time, Sear explained, they decided to share. Mother Earth pinched off the tails of a few tadpoles and gave them legs so they could walk on her belly. She called the beautiful, reaping creatures her toads, the jewels of creation. Tad glanced around the room at the shining faces. Mother Earth loved her toads so much that she gave them Toadville by Tumbledown, with nice rotting wood, a mulch pile, and a garden full of bugs and worms. A voice cried from the back, and she thought the toads were so wonderful that she pressed the shape of a toad on the face of the moon. Shh, somebody said. Let Sear tell it. She did do that, Sear said, and to show how much she loves her toads, she takes them back into her belly every year before Father Pond covers her with snow. The creation story always made Tad forget everything, except how perfectly splendid he was. Mother Earth and Father Pond's own jewel. Thank you. As you can tell from this moment in the story, the toads have a very strong sense of the connection between themselves and the rest of the natural world. And like Taylor lying on that dock, they feel that they are the exact center of the universe. Now here, you can tell by the look on Taylor's face that she is not happy. And the reason she is not happy is because she has just learned that this pond and woods, which is her very special place, has been sold so that a strip mall can be built. And I want to read you just a bit of the conversation between these two. And here at the first, it's the construction guy talking. Well, it's okay to pick the flowers today, but I'm going to be bringing some heavy equipment in here tomorrow, and then it won't be safe to be over here. I need to get the woods down by the road bulldozed first, and then take this shed, or whatever it is, out of here. Then the big guys will be coming in to get rid of the pond, and this old place will be cleaned up. Shouldn't take more than a couple of weeks, depending on the weather. His cheerfulness about destroying her world made her shake inside. Cleaned up? Did he think she was stupid and didn't understand what was really happening? He didn't know a thing about how it felt to jump off the dock on a hot day, how the boards creaked as she ran the length of the dock, how the frame felt warm when she curled her toes against it to push off for a dive, how the cold current tickled as she settled deeper and felt a fish brush her leg. There's a groundhog who lives in there. Taylor pointed to the tumble-down shed. Last Saturday, she and Kia had seen little groundhogs waddling through the grass. For the man, Taylor made her voice sound sweet. Sometimes grown-ups were suckers for animal stories. She has 3 babies. The other day, she stopped in my grandmother's yard, and we got to watch her nurse them. Aw, he said. He was such a phony. Taylor wanted to kick his shins. So what's going to happen to that family, she demanded. Well, I guess that old groundhog will just have to move, he said cheerfully. Taylor glared at him over the armful of phlox, then turned and stormed back up the hill. Remember, it won't be safe to be over here after today, he called. Don't want any accidents. He couldn't banish her from her own kingdom. She would protest. Taylor does plan to protest, but actually, she ends up doing much more than protesting. As Taylor has found out what the future holds for her place in the world, the toads have also found out what's in store for them, because Seer has had a horrible vision of what's to come. And this is how he describes it. He talks here about a monster named Rumbler. Translated into human terms, Rumbler is a giant earth-moving machine. And Seer says, Rumbler is as big as many mulch piles. He has a cry like 20 lightning bolts fighting each other. He smells like a mountain of stink bugs. I have felt his belly on the earth. I have heard his bellows. He will come on feet with teeth. He will scrape the grass off the earth, leaving earthworms and grubs to bake in the sun. He will hit the trees, making them shake out squirrels and baby birds. And groundhogs will try to flee, but he will overtake them. And tumble down will crumble on our backs. Because Seer is a prophet, he sees that the only way to forestall this terrible prophecy is for one of the toads, who of course turns out to be Tad, to travel to a place called Reno and to find and kiss on the lips a human child. And of course, that person is Tad, who very much does not want to go because he's a bit cowardly. He's afraid of falling stars and rustling leaves. And he's not called Tad for nothing. Even for a toad, he's very small. But it is his calling that he needs to do this. And Seer tells Tad, bless you, Seer tells Tad that he will know the Queen of the Hop when he finds her, because she will bear two signs, and they're the two signs you see here. One looks sort of like a tiara, and one looks sort of like a crown. So, off Tad goes. Imagine this little guy hopping from Iowa to Nevada, which is what we're dealing with here. He starts off, he has a series of misadventures, some of which are frightening and terrible. But one thing Seer told him before he left was he could trust the mantises to point the way. And here you see a mantis pointing the way towards what the toads think of as a roaring, stinky thing with a shell on its back, which is a produce truck. And Tad, taking a deep breath of faith, gets on it and burrows down into a crate of carrots and rides for several days to Reno. And of course, Meanwhile, our girl Taylor is also on her way to Reno. Not that she wants to be. She wants to be at home protesting the destruction of her pond. But her parents play in a retro band, and so they make her go along on this family vacation to a rock and roll extravaganza in Reno, which is really something she would much rather not do. But as children know, sometimes the adult world prescribes what you do. Now, I won't tell you exactly how Tad and Taylor connect in Reno, but as you can tell from this picture, they do connect, and I will tell you it has something to do with room service, a pizza, and a salad. Taylor knows that this tender critter is not safe in the big city of Reno, and so she makes a plan to rescue him and keep him until they go home, and then she will turn him loose in her grandmother's garden. So she builds him a little box in her closet, and she buys him canned crickets, and she just tries to keep him alive until she can get him home. He understands that she is trying to save him, and he comes to think of her as his girl. But she isn't the queen of the hop, who he is desperate to find and kiss so he can go home. So he spends most of his time trying to break out of his box, which he's gotten good at. And in this scene here, once more, he has broken out of his box, and he has tried desperately hard to break out of the hotel room, but hasn't been able to. So, sad and worried, he climbs up to sit beside Taylor as she sleeps. And let me read you the last little passage here about his musings. He wished he could find a way to tell her to take him to the Queen. When she woke up, he would try once again somehow to make it clear. He climbed up to sit beside her to wait for her awakening. She smelled nice. Actually, she smelled sort of familiar, like borage, which was his favorite garden smell. And she looked nice, too, for a human. She was a pretty color. Her hair gleamed like moonlight. She didn't have any warts, though, and that was too bad. As he sat with one of his hands resting on a strand of her hair, he imagined kissing her. He remembered when the idea of kissing a human had seemed so nasty it made him want to throw up. But now it didn't seem that bad. It was a nice thought. He could practice the kiss on this girl. But what would happen? Was it possible his kiss would turn her into a higher toadly being? He would like that. He was lonely and needed a friend. But how would she feel? She might be afraid to change. He sat for a long time, his hand on a soft tendril of her hair, wondering. As he is trying desperately to find the Queen, Taylor is trying desperately to draw attention to the plight of the pond. And she hears from last year's Queen of the Hop that reporters interview the Queen on TV. So Taylor decides that she should try to become Queen of the Hop so that she will get her TV time and can make her pitch for saving the pond. And of course, not only does she enter the contest, but she wins it. And you see her here wearing the two signs that Sears said to look for, the crown and the sash. And the revelation is complete. And here you see them, eye to eye, ready for the big smackaroo that will change everything. And I'm going to quit here. This is at about the 3/4 point of the book. Could we have lights now, please? Thank you. I'm going... Well, I want to kind of wrap up, too. Thank you. Yes, just a couple of minutes. I would just say that in fiction, as in real life, things rarely turn out like you expect them to. And we have 2 minutes for questions, so I would happily receive any questions you have. All right, thank you very much.
Would you stay?